Namaste, good morning, everyone. I'm 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗹. I'm here with you guys today with our 10th episode of 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗹. I hope everyone out there is doing good, be staying safe, maintaining the social distance. During this pandemic, we're just trying to divert your mind from all the chaos that's going on at this moment. So we can talk about some of the happening things in the legal domain at the moment. For today's episode, we have two esteemed guests with us. I would like to welcome them as well. Firstly, we have 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗹, our attorney from Delhi, India. She's one of the founding partners of TRS Law Offices, alumnus of Martiniere Girls College and the Lady Shri Ram College. She got her law degree from the Delhi University. She has also extensively worked with young entrepreneurs and corporate houses. Her work includes complex commercial litigations, corporate structuring, general advisory, and policy work. Also is an associate with the Faculty of Law, University of Tasmania. She has a big credential. Welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you for having me over. I'm really looking forward to this session and interacting. So thank you for organizing that.
Thank you, ma'am. Then we have 𝗪𝗪𝗧 Giri. 𝗪𝗪𝗧 Giri is an advocate in Nepal, but he is currently residing in San Jose, California. He is the founder and president of Silicon Hire LLC and a smart law incubator. He is one of the pioneers of legal technology in Nepal. He has been working to provide legal technology solutions in Nepal and United States for almost 2 decades now. And he specializes in being a remote corporate immigration specialist as well, with the leading US law firms and attorneys, delivering a lot of non-immigrant and immigrant visa cases and other corporate law stuff. He has been working on one-stop legal process outsourcing solution for a while now too. Welcome, 𝗪𝗪𝗧.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So let's start with the conversation with the elephant in the room. How are you guys doing? How is it going? How's the situation down there where you guys are at right now? I'll start with 𝗪𝗪𝗴𝗹, ma'am.
Yeah, so please call me 𝗪𝗪𝗴𝗪. Yes, so I'm live out of New Delhi, and as you may be aware, we are now in our multiple phase of lockdown. However, there has been a bit of opening up. It remains a cause of concern because the rate of doubling of COVID still continues to be at 13 something days. And of course, there is the uncertainty that it has brought around in terms of access to legal services, access to justice, because as such, I think we were caught pretty much unaware with the fast pace of COVID spreading. And I don't think anybody imagined way back in December or January that we would be looking at such a huge transition taking place in what is the normal as of now. So those concerns remain. It's the onset of summer that's also started. So, things are not really in a happy shape at the moment, but we've been doing fairly well on a lot of aspects in terms of how quickly things have transitioned on. And that's always a cause of hope in that sense that things would be able to, if they can transition as quickly, and then they probably be able to get established as quickly as well. So I'm always an optimist in such situations because I believe change is always for the better.
Yeah. So by the way, how has it been affecting the business side of things for you currently?
Well, so frankly, once the lockdown was announced, we were in a relatively better position of being able to shift most of our associates to work from home. However, since a part of our work also involves litigation, and in terms of courts, the general outlook is that courts may be approached in case of urgent matters. So there are urgent matters that are getting listed, but as such, while there has been a phenomenal bit of work that's been happening on legal advisories, because there are various notifications that are coming out with the government, there's a lot that's happening in terms of building up a public consensus on the various fallouts of COVID-19, whether it's in the space of labor or in terms of changing technologies or basically people accessing work, because we are in that sense legal services of being able to provide support to our clients in business and other things. But outside of that, since for the last 10 days, the government in Delhi did announce that 1/3 of the office could come back to workplace. So we've been working with the new SOPs that have been developed around hygiene and other methods of disinfecting offices and following social distance. So in that sense, work has gone back to some sort of normalcy in terms of pre-COVID. So lawyers have gotten back to a bit to work, but of course it's just about 1/3 of it. So those challenges are there. But I see the fact that we seem to be more settled in. Our community is more settled in, more accepted with the fact that things are going to move out. So in that sense, again, like I said, it's something that the only thing that is problematic at the moment is the uncertainty of how long the situation will continue and whether it will continue at this pace, will there be some more opening up? And then, of course, the anxiety that is brought about by a pandemic of this nature. I think all of us are dealing with it. We, as lawyers, are dealing with it personally, but we're also dealing with it professionally in terms of businesses often looking for guidance as to what might be happening. But overall, work has continued, and that shift has that transitioning, while I can't call it very smooth, has at least the transitioning has taken place to a large extent. And that's something that we're grateful for.
Thank you. I think the same questions for Santosh as well. I mean, how are things down there? How's business? What's going on?
Yeah, it's getting pretty interesting actually. Today, I live in California, especially in Santa Clara County, and I do assist a few small businesses. And today, Santa Clara County came out with a notice that not just essential business, but other businesses could also reopen, provided that they follow certain protocols. So right now, right before this call, I was helping a small business follow the protocols. There's a checklist that they came up with, and all businesses are required to post COVID-19 prepared ready signs in a customer-facing doorway. And then there's a bunch of checklists for the employees, employer, and the customers. So I was helping the small business go through the checklist right before this call. So it's not as bad as New York. California is also hit, but California started preparation quite early, and that has actually helped control a lot of situations. As for my professional engagement, business side of it, it's definitely hit. It's one of the I basically provide paralegal services to a couple of law firms, attorneys, and some corporate houses, and business has significantly gone down. But the good thing is, majority of the work we do can still continue and has been continuing throughout the COVID-19 phase, all because of legal technology, excellent legal technology, where there's 100% online filing, 100% online submissions. You do not necessarily have to have original signed paperwork. You can mail these documents, you can email these documents, and I can actually feel the optimum stage of how legal technology could actually help us, especially in a country like ours. In Nepal, India, South Asia, where majority of population, the administration, the court, lawyers, everyone has to go through rigorous paperwork, physical presence, in-person visits to authorities. This all could be avoided. And I'm actually, luckily, although in times of COVID, I'm lucky enough to experience this entire process. And I'm really, I'm getting an insight of what kind of legal technology services would possibly should be having in South Asia, actually. So it's pretty interesting.
Thank you, Santosh. Now let's try to go towards our topic. I mean, as much as we talk about legal technology staying outside of South Asia, it's still a unicorn in South Asia, because a lot has been done in the worldwide sector, but still in the South Asia, we're still following the orthodox way of doing things, especially how things are handled in court, or how things are handled in the law firms, you know. things like that. So let's start with, what does legal technology mean for you? I'll start with 𝗧𝗪𝗧, and then I'll go towards Santosh in the same manner. And 𝗧𝗪𝗧, could you also shed some light on what are the recent developments in legal technology in India? How is it? Is it similar in the urban areas and the rural areas, or is it more centralized towards the urban area?
Right, thank you, Alok. So when you ask me about legal technology as a lawyer, the first things that come to my mind is that legal technology is basically a superstructure based on in terms of easing out processes. And therefore, the principles of law remain important. What are those principles? These are common law principles that are there, which is about access to justice, which has been held by our Supreme Court. There are various, transparency that needs to be brought about to the process. It has to be about a fair process of law that is for carrying on. And these are the various principles which is then accessed and sort of supported by technology. So in that sense, technology is not the master here. It is the law that remains paramount. So if you ask me as to what technology in terms of law means, it basically can be at various levels of intervention. It could be at the litigation level, as Santosh mentioned. It could be about access to justice and speedy justice there. At a client level, it could mean as to how the technologies are being adapted by lawyers and those that are stakeholders in the justice delivery mechanism to help take out useless processes which are time consuming and streamline the process wherein law can be or legal justice can be delivered with much more speed than it's constantly present. And then of course the third aspect of it is also the concern that is around penetration of technology. And I think I'm very glad that you asked the question about rural areas versus urban areas. I mean, we're all aware that India as such, if you are to look at it, in large parts of South Asia in that sense, are divided into highly urbanized zones, which have access to the kind of technology with deep penetration of technology to the last mile, as opposed to areas that are not as developed or overpopulated, or resource crunches may be available, because of which access to technology itself is primarily a challenge. So it's also that which comes into interplay when we are looking at the justice delivery mechanism, or we are looking at technology in law, because it does pose larger questions as well. And those larger questions actually have gained paramount importance. Now, where India is concerned, please be mindful of the fact that, computerizations of court was actually laid down way back in the 1990s by the 𝗦C stepping up with the e-court project. So a large part of that system was anyway online. But those challenges have been there because there has been at some level, this is a process that takes a lot of time because of the nature of work involved, because it is a fundamental right to have access to justice. So moving all of that in terms of the documentation, but even before the COVID scenario, there were, whether it was filings in court, which could be e-filings, or as we were discussing about RTIs that were there, or other processes, taxation processes that had been moved online, courts that had, a lot of the systems that had been taken under technology. So you had boards that were running at any point in time. We could see how the courts were running. We could also see in terms of access, in terms of client servicing, a lot of things had moved in. I mean, let's admit it, when I joined the profession, which was years ago, if you wanted access even to the information that was available as lawyers, we all remember picking up our bags, going to the best library, trying to sit there, or in short, acquiring that library on our own. I mean, a lawyer's library was there. And I still find it a little odd that today, you all you need is a pen drive or a subscription to a site that is there. And that has pretty much moved on, because these are things that instead of acquiring a library, you're looking at acquiring the database that's around there. The courts have also made it phenomenally easy, because a lot of judgments that are there are available completely on their website. So that access is there, that transparency is there, that system has already worked in. But perhaps what was lacking was that push that was to come in terms of virtual courts, in terms of virtual meetings, in terms of online dispute resolution. And we have really been pushed into online dispute resolution in a hurry, because once lockdown came about, it was with that the understanding came in that justice delivery mechanisms need to continue. And even as we speak, the courts are trying to get used to how they are going to be looking at health and hygiene standards. How are they going to ensure that at the same time things can be met in? Because when we are looking at online dispute resolution, it works slightly differently from the old method. There is the level of technology that is needed. For example, you said documentation in terms of digital signatures, in terms of the verification of such documentation. Because let's admit it, justice is a function of the state, which has to be taken very, very seriously in democracies. And as a democracy, it becomes one of the parameters by which the touchstone of democracy is there. And then, of course, there are the other very uncomfortable questions that need to be asked. What are the processes? What is the transparency of the process? Is it going to be an open source? If it is going to be an open source, how are we going to ensure that it is at the latest? And I think perhaps it should be rightly pointed out that everywhere in the world, technology has been, in that sense, adapted not in a proactive way. It is often adapted in order to make things easier because things have already come to a standstill. There is no alternative. And perhaps with that is where I see a lot of opportunity with the current scenario, because it helps us get used to this, because it is not easy. If you're used to reading from books, it takes you a while to get down to documents. If you're used to arguing in a court or being present in a physical meeting with a client for client counseling, these are not things that you can immediately take on, because technology does bring about its own challenges. So that's, as such, if you were to ask me, I think there was a fair bit of, process which had already moved online. Now, whether that moving of online has sort of penetrated all of India, I think I'd be incorrect if I were to claim that. I think the best of us in the field acknowledge that is a problem that remains because of the large population and scarce resource. But having said that, I think it's important to remember that if you can have the Cokes and the Pepsis of the world reaching the last mile and the last outpost every place in South Asia, then I don't think that justice would be more difficult to implement or legal processes to be coming in. But I think it's also important for us to remember that as stakeholders, as lawyers, as legal consultants, that we need to understand that it's our responsibility. As this change comes about, it's our responsibility to adhere to that change rather than resisting it. Because I think a lot of the times as a profession, law firms, lawyers, they tend to be a little, so we sort of live in our world of taking things the old way. And it does not mean that is wrong. It just means that, times now call for a different thing. So there's been significant rise in terms of how AI has come about as well. So I think IBM Watson has something where it has gone in to prove that very tedious legal processes, which could be automated, can be automated, so firms can divert their human capital to other things that may be more challenging for lawyers, but also at a higher billing model. So therefore, those are the changes that they were already in the anvil. They've been in the anvil for a long time. The question was, when was it going to get adopted? And as the world moves towards a place where health and hygiene become important with this kind of a pandemic, it's perhaps the right time to push for this change and go for it completely.
Thank you, 𝗟𝗲𝗴. Yeah, I rightfully pointed out. I mean, I think it's all of our responsibility right now to step outside of our comfort zone and do something extra for it to. I mean, nobody knows what the new normal is going to look like, but I think we have a feeling of what it's going to be like too. Coming to Santosh now, Santosh, I mean, I know you started the smart law software back in 2001 in Nepal.
Yeah.
And I've heard your story where you were running around law offices with a CD, so the lawyers could install it to their computer. It was not much at that time. I think as much as I know from it, it was just about scheduling, calendaring, and reminders and things like that. Not much. Yeah. And then now, I think it's been over 14 years now. You've been in the States, something like that. Yeah. So it's a huge change from where you originally are from, how things are down here, to the hub of legal technology, if I'm not wrong, where a lot of things move very fast and everything is centralized and requires online filing a lot. And just shed some light and share your experience from 2001, how things were here to how things are there now with Department of Labor and USCIS itself opening up a lot of channels for online filings and all of that.
Yeah, thank you. So the story was like this. So I was right out of law school, and in Nepal in 2000 I graduated, and then a couple of us we were trying to see how the next generation legal service could go. Internet was pretty new. Computers were still pretty new in Nepal, but we figured out that there were about maybe 500 lawyers in Kathmandu who had access to computers and were, well, processing their documents in computer instead of typewriters at that time. So we came up with an idea of how about we kick off a case management system which could actually help calendar, manage the clients, bring in very few available legal texts, acts, and regulations, and the Constitution in one place, so that the lawyer could have access to it at any given point. So at that time, we didn't have much room except to come up with a CD based program. We call it Smart Law, and we were actually able to install it at 160 installations, including a couple of legal aid service providers, legal aid agencies. And the learning from that was practitioners were definitely very enthusiastic towards the use of legal technology to ease their own case management as well as client management. But still, the technology itself was taken kind of a more complex thing to deal with. So we ended up training the attorneys, training the paralegals, training whoever the user was, most of the time troubleshooting. It went on for a couple of years until then I came to the Silicon Valley to continue my law. And over these years, having worked with law firms, a couple of law firms, and having used variations of legal softwares, case management softwares, as well as online filing platforms with several government agencies, the question has always been in my mind that if legal services can be streamlined so easily through legal technology for the people, as well as the administration, as well as the court, why can't we do the same thing in our parts of the world, basically South Asia, especially Nepal and India and our neighbors. So we started going back to Nepali legal system again and trying to see what are the gaps there. So I started doing some research, reaching out to my old colleagues, my network. I started frequently visiting Nepal, and I actually spent 2 to 3 years learning the legal technology gap in Nepal, and then we started developing few things around it. For example, we've just launched, and it's still growing. It's a 𝗟𝗏𝗏 platform. It's a free legal question and answer forum where anyone can ask legal question, and any lawyer who specializes in the domain can chime in and they can respond to it. There are various of those platforms over here in the US, but those kind of platforms were definitely lacking in Nepal. So that's what we are developing in one side. The legal technology itself for me came because I live in Silicon Valley, and then my background is in law. So it kind of made sense to me that both law and technology, they collide in one single point, that's code. So the technology deals with code and law deals with code. So codes could be the common factor there. So if we build on that, we could definitely, like she said, we could be easing legal aid. We could be easing access to justice. We could be easing speedy trial. We could be doing a lot of things around it. I have been fortunate enough to use variations of legal technology, online filings, e-filing, e-submissions. Recently, during COVID-19, the government authorities over here, it's called United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, and Department of Labor, and Department of State, and even courts, district, federal, all levels of legal administration, they have come up with their own COVID-19 policies, and they have eased the process for the people as well as attorneys, where instead of a wet signature, they are now accepting digital signatures. Instead of paper filing, paper submission, they are now accepting email submissions. Instead of mailing out decisions in a mail, they are now sending those decisions through email. So there's a lot of changes that I see, which is definitely very, very comfortable for everyone, very easy. And it also saves a lot of time. It also saves lots of resources. And these are the things, these are the learnings we could basically, these are small but very important things, I believe, which could be captured, which could be maybe replicated, maybe thoroughly understood, and we could build something around these same experiences in our parts. So yeah, that's about it for me over here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, Santosh and I have been working together since 2011, 2012, and I vividly remember how this all conversation started back in the days when we were working as paralegals, and we were serving so many IT companies at the same time, and we were in the law domain as well, and we figured out where it coincided, and then I think that opened up ways for a few of the tools that we launched back then to whizcounty.com, AutoPath. I mean, even in the US, there were so many gaps when it comes to legal technology.
Right.
You would expect that they would have a lot of tools out there already in place, but there were still gaps. So, I mean, now coming back to Nepal, I mean, I don't want to criticize the court system much in that matter, but then again, even in this current situation, not much has been done to facilitate access to justice right now. Either there are very few cases going on in Supreme Courts right now. That's like basically the one of the few courts open right now, going through cases. I mean, when we talk about legal technology, it's not just about e-discovery. It's not just about case management. It's not just about scheduling or, I mean, in Nepal, if you talk about legal technology, people understand it just as a website, you know.
Right.
That's kind of I mean, the situation down here. So, I mean, the legal technology actually moves way past just the legal professionals, and then actually the end goal is always serving the users, the general public, right? And that has been our practice down here with Meroata as well. That's what we do. We use social media down here to provide people knowledge about the common laws that they need to know. With Q&As right now, we're coming up with one-stop business solutions. We're coming up with DIY contracts and things like that. And on the back end, there are a lot of other stuff. I'm going to come back on the next context about it, about the challenges we are facing down here as well. I mean, and moving on to the next thing, which Talise rightfully brought it up earlier too. Technology moves really fast, not just legal technology, the entire technology. So it's up to the leaders, the government, to adapt to it. with the changes. And then unlike any other laws and policies, when it comes to technology, technology comes first, and then the government and the legislative and the court has to adapt to it, right? So please shed some light on it with your experiences in India, and also please shed some light on some of the best policies that might have come out that really has helped this sector.
So I think when you're looking at technology, again, it's a double-sided thing that you're looking at. One is, how does technology aid? But the second is also the governance of the technology. So in terms of, and it was wonderful to hear Santosh talking about how way back in 2000 you'd have have to go around with a CD with the system, and it's so difficult to imagine. I think it's almost like referring to going to a bank to line up for cash. Once ATMs have come along, a lot of us have forgotten those pain points that you had a passbook which was kept secure, and then you had to go to some place, stand there, have a cup of tea. Going to bank was a task, and it's been very similar for technology that came in to aid law. So smaller things that you're talking about in terms of file management systems that have been there, in terms of in terms of just the smallest of things. So I always give the example of a diary. You see, when we just joined the profession, how to maintain a diary was something that was actually taught by somebody senior to you, because somewhere it was never a part of legal education. Legal education was about laws, but not about the process of how you kept a file, how you inspected a file. But the most important thing was keeping your diary so that you knew when the next matter was, what was the date that the matter had been put for, what are the things that were there in the matter. And this could sometimes, depending on who which office you were associated with, what your experience or internships had been like, it could take you from hours to days. And today, that's something that doesn't happen in almost all offices across the world. There is some sort of a system or the other. Similarly, for going to libraries, for accessing justice, for accessing information of justice systems outside of your jurisdiction. So at one point in time, if you needed to go across to any of the Commonwealth cases that had been put in, you had to go to the international library that was in town, or somebody who might have been privileged enough economically to own a subscription to, a British Law Journal or an American Law Journal, or a Harvard Law School, publication that would be coming in. Whereas today it's all about getting online and clicking in and probably paying a small sum of fee, which is actually, at the way it has made things convenient, one is actually willing to pay that price, because essentially in our work, time also becomes of the essence. And time is money, because lawyers do bill by the hour. So that side of it is actually interesting, because when you see the evolution that has taken place very quickly. But the other part about technology is that, as such as you were referring to, right, technology and law are fields that are understood by very few people, especially when taken with in conjunction with each other. So those that are into technology often do not understand the world of law, and those that are into law are completely confounded by technology, because it seems to be something that moves very fast, it moves in. So there's also the question of how one manages the governance of that technology. So there is, of course, that entire debate that has taken place about open source, about, softwares that are owned. There is also the issues of right to privacy, because what happens, I mean, at a level, of course, right to privacy would be against the larger aggregators that are there. So we've seen the phenomenal case that happened between Facebook and the government in the US and other things. The EU has been very, very, vocal about how there must be unbundling between technologies, so that, at that point in time, there is no market which becomes a monopoly in that sense. All of that is there. But in terms of the Indian context, it's also important to remember, how do we govern technology? Because for something that changes so fast, and lawmaking itself in a democratic system is a process that takes consultation, it takes time, whereas the laws need to be so dynamic, so active, because technology can change sometimes just overnight. And when you look at it, of course, it seems like a slow pace of change, but it is just as fast as somebody coming up with an idea and implementing that idea. So what happens around it? And in that sense, I think the world over, the perfect example of that is self-driving cars. What do you do with the legislation that is there around traffic? If it's a car that's driven, and I'm putting it very simply, if it's a car that is driven by a machine, where does the liability lie? Similarly, in terms of online justice mechanism system or ODR or online dispute resolution, where are we going to put in the systems of transparency? So the first problem that actually arises is that, do we have the experts? There are very few people who understand both the realities of the justice delivery mechanisms in South Asian democracies, and at the same time understand the technology enough to be able to frame rules around it. And those scholars are very few and far in between, right? Then you have to look at the fact that in terms of not allowing a party or a group of individuals to take advantage of that in an unfair way. Now, this could mean in terms of how do the security systems work when you're looking at online dispute resolution, because let's acknowledge that a lot of the paperwork that goes on in court sometimes may be of a nature where it would harm any of the parties tremendously if that information was to come out before it became public information, so to speak. And this could be, for example, in the case of when you're filing some high value patent. Certain things are kept only within the patent office until the patenting process is complete. So those are those issues that are taking place. But I think primarily when I look at South Asian democracies and I look at India, I think I'd be very worried about the access to justice. Because if it was to become a rule, then what happens? And I'd go back to the principle that was laid down by Mahatma Gandhi. Unless it affects the one person who is the most non-privileged, until that point, every decision must be analyzed from the perspective of that person. So therefore, what about the access? I mean, we're talking about a country where there is a significant resource scarcity, where sometimes 2 meals a day are an impossibility. Where are we talking about the access in terms of via the technology? So how do we have a marriage of those? And those are the questions that need to be dealt with. And of course, there's been a focus in India. So if you are to, if you were to look up, you'd see that our Honorable Chief Justice Bobde, during the Constitution Day in November in 2019, had made this phenomenal speech about how access to justice is a right and technology will play a part in it. But things are evolving. And while I'm sure that, if we connect maybe 4 or 5 years from now, we'll find that as, dated in terms of imagining, as we may find Santosh's journey of taking a CD and trying to help people adapt in Nepal. But the fact remains that it is those kind of stories right now. So it's an open frontier there. And in terms of the frontier, one has to look at, again, not just the micro issues of implementation, but also the macro issues of the larger base principles of law. We are looking at rules of common law. We are looking at access to justice. Because justice, unless delivered, has no meaning in that sense. It's a concept of equality that needs to be looked into. It is a concept of how there's going to be true delivery of justices. So in that, there are these issues which are organizational issues. So it's not just about, one is the systems level, the second is the organization level, and the third is of being able to have a very futuristic policy. Now, in terms of policy, we also know that, as such, in terms of policy, there are a fair bit that has been done by the government. But implementation in terms of technology is very different from talking about something. And just to give a very layman example, you and I can talk about, let's get on Facebook and let's do a live. But if you don't even know what Facebook is to start with, and we decide to do a live, then, each person, so that you bring in the technology aspect, I'd probably bring in the legal aspect in terms of what are your rights in terms of intellectual property, what are your rights in terms of what Facebook owns, how much can Facebook earn from it, whether they should be giving you something, what happens in case there is some sort of a disruption or somebody ghosts into a meeting like this, which can also happen. Now, those are the issues that are at the implementation stage. And then there is the larger issue. How is it that, if we were to have this as a panel discussion face to face, there would always be the issue about, how much control you would have, how much control I would have. Whereas with technology, that control is something that can actually sometimes rest with a party completely unconcerned with the issue at all. So it's a alternative universe in that sense. And for every alternative universe, there has to be an alternative structure. But that structure, again, is going to be based on the basis of all the principles that are set out in any constitution of any country. And those principles enshrined in the constitution then need to find their marriage with technology. So I see that right now it's really in terms of the realms of all of us understanding how does it work out. And then, of course, there is a challenge of living through it. So yes, you can have the best systems in the world and you can sort of put in everything online and you can get a judgment online, but what happens if when your electricity goes? What happens when there's a storm? Which basically means that this is not a system that you can completely rely on. You'll also have to have backups that are there. And it is this sort of murky waters as we're going through. It is over the next couple of months and quarters and years that we will see how it emerges. Now, worldwide, yes, there are a lot of mechanisms that have worked towards alternate dispute resolution. However, the success of that has also often been limited because they've been within limited scopes of jurisdiction. It's not that physical courts have been done away with, but also you must remember that in the context of South Asia, I think perhaps our greatest strength is our demographic dividend, as we like to call it. And I always find that as a bit of a joke, Alok, because when I was in school, I was told that one of the reasons that India is backwards is because of its population. And then by the time I got into the profession, and in the last years, I've been hearing the term as to how we will reap benefit with the demographic dividend, because economies have people that are aging, which is to say that the same piece of information can be interpreted in various manners. Right? But at the same time, when we look at how, in terms of interpretations, if things can be moved like that, then we have to also understand that this demographic dividend is available to us only when people have a sense of agency. And that agency only comes about when their rights are assured. So, it's a very, very large terrain right now, and there is going to be crystallization. It'll also have the standard issues that came about with any sort of large change that happened in history. So if you look at the history of industrialization, it wasn't that it happened overnight. Rights were then negotiated between rights and duties, what belonged as a right of the employer, the employee, human rights developed in the concept, child rights developed post in the industrial, the industrial revolution, so that we call them, the duties of the state developed in that sense. And I think that is the space right now that it will take place. Of course, certain concepts are developed, but other concepts will need to be developed, and those concepts will need to uphold the test of time. And that will become important because technology is just, it changes like that. So there's no set pattern, and that's the beauty of technology. Because technology can become anything within a day. What we thought as technology, I mean, a lot of us in school went down, learned coding in terms of basic language and Lotus language. I mean, show me one coder today who actually follows that, because it's redundant. And that's where, in terms of the redundancy, I think at a basic level, that's the change, because law must be something that must be able to uphold the test of time, which in the best manner possible, for everyone around to be able to get the basic human rights. Whereas technology is a free-for-all. It can change into whatever as long as it is making things easy. And because of the very contradictory nature of these two things, it is going to be difficult to see what the end product will emerge as. But there will be a lot more end products that will come in, that's for sure. Because I don't think law can afford to, and is refusing to afford to it at any point now, that technology is going to come into our lives. It's coming, it's here. And I think that is the watershed moment. I mean, when one will look back on this pandemic, and human civilization has had pandemics throughout its history. So when one looks at the COVID pandemic, I think perhaps it would be a defining moment in terms of the technology revolution that we are going through.
Yeah, thank you, Talisa. I mean, I don't think technology has ever been so relevant as right now. I mean, probably since the inception of the internet in the 90s. I mean, this has been the time when technology has been our friend, and everybody needs it right now. I mean, look, we're talking through Zoom right now and live on Facebook. Santosh, I'm going to come back to you with a similar question. What do you see the policy? I mean, just a little bit different, because India has been a little bit more progressive when it comes to adopting with the laws, whereas Nepal has been kind of slow to catch up with it. I was just reading an article from advocate Praveen Subedi yesterday about the new law about investigation that passed through the parliament, where anyone of us can be, our phones can be tapped anytime now for investigation and all of that, which is really scary. And yeah, I mean, so I think somehow we're actually moving in opposite directions to where we should be moving forward, actually, because there hasn't been enough policies or laws that has been supporting the technology sector itself. And legal technology is just a very, very, very small part of it. I mean, what are the policy bottlenecks that you are seeing, and Probably you can shed some light on why as well.
Yeah, I mean, what I've seen in the last few years, especially I would precisely say last 3 to 5 years in Nepal, things have been moving rapidly in legal technology. Right, in the last few years, Supreme Court of Nepal has now pretty much digitalized its court processing, not the services itself, but just the court calendaring and public facing information, which is a good thing. I see Nepal Law Commission making sure that all laws, regulations are available for general public in both Nepali and English languages on their website and as the only official resources for legal resources in Nepal. I see another Nepal Kanun Patrika, which is called Nepal Law Journal, which publishes the precedents in Nepal. It's online, and then the Rajpatra, which actually publishes all laws of Nepal as they are passed by the parliament. That's online, and these are really good steps towards the development. I see private sectors like ILIRC, which came out with kind of an initial version of our own Westlaw, I would say, but it's not precisely Westlaw, but it's more like a combination of our precedents and where you can search old cases, but not as robust as the legal research system like Westlaw and Lexis. Besides that, I see people working in silos in legal technology, such as Lex Jurist. There's a bunch of other groups such as Follow Up Leaders. It's a group by law students who is very tech savvy, who are working towards an idea of providing technology savvy legal services and information out there. I see Pro Bono by another group of law students and young lawyers who are working towards providing pro bono services in Nepal. I see groups like 𝗟𝗏 𝗧𝗲𝗏𝗃, Delta Law, Lexpertise, 𝗟𝗏𝗴𝗹, and a couple of them who are trying to work in silos, but somehow they are contributing to the bigger picture. While these things are developing, on the other side, we're missing what exactly legal technology could serve, how it could ease the normal processing side of all kinds of legal services in administrations and courts. For example, I try to consolidate all of our legal technology products and services that we have been doing in our company by combining everything, consolidating everything into one company, by naming it Smart Law Incubator in January. I started the company registration process. The reason I wanted to do it from here while I was in California was that the office of the company registrar of Nepal, on its website, it clearly says that filing and registration of company and corporation are online. You can file companies online now. So I wanted to test this basically, and this is what we should do actually. So I started my submission of my paperwork and gradually moved forward, and it's been 4 to 5 months, I believe, but it's nowhere near closer. What I mean to say is, although our administration, although our courts, although our system have been boasting about legal technology, about easing, like you said, access to justice should be on top of it. But whether there is delivery on the side or not, that is very important. And those are the things I see missing in various parts. Company registrar office is just an example. There are other issues that are coming up, like the example Alok just said about the phone tapping law that was put in Parliament last week. And there's issues of of human right violations. There are a couple of fundamental rights that are not being delivered. People cannot even go to court physically because there's technically a curfew system in Nepal where you are not allowed to go out of your home. It's not just a shelter-in place, but it's a forced remain in your home no matter what. You cannot even go to the court. You cannot even go to the police. Um, um, People who actually needed legal aid at this time are not able to get access to legal aid. There's possibly hundreds of prisoners out there who need some kind of assistance. There's possibly a lot of people in the middle of case proceeding who needs justice, speedy trial. Another aspect I see what needs immediate attention is the right to information in Nepal, which is basically paper-based filing of right to information so far, whereas the technology could evolve this RTI into some kind of power in every people's hand, so that they can hold the local government, the central government, the parliament, the executive, legislative, judiciary, everyone accountable for what they are doing. They could have the power to question them. They could have the power to know what's going on. And these are the things where we could possibly focus. And I love what organizations like INSAF, Legal Incubator Center in Pakistan does. I love what NAMATI does. I love what International Legal Technology Association does. There's a legal technology section in American Bar Association website as well. So I do follow them to keep myself abreast of how the legal technology is evolving these days globally, and how we could use legal technologies to better the lives of our people in our country, in our South Asian part. The best thing Nepal could do right now is to learn from India's legal technology innovation. Like there's so many technological advancements I see. For example, legal research is way ahead of time in India, where we are still trying to figure it out in Nepal. We could learn that. India is a huge population with a lot of lawyers practicing there, whereas we are limited to a couple of thousands. So we could basically derive the best examples from the legal services in India, how legal technology has been evolving and adapting in India, and we could learn from their mistakes too. And maybe a SARC level dialogue or a South Asia level dialogue on legal technology could help make the entire legal technology domain really, really strong for South Asia. I'll give you one more example, which I was discussing with a friend. He's a technology guy. He's not a legal guy, but he's come up with a very, very simple technology which is able to scan our fingerprints with your regular mobile device, with your phone, with your camera and the light. And that technology he's been able to market in South America and in Africa to prepare legal documentation where the fingerprints can be added to the legal documentation, and it could as well have legal values such as loan documentation, person-to-person loan documentation, or any kind of legal documentation. I mean, this kind of technology would mean a lot in our parts where a lot of people are, less educated, are not tech savvy, but still could take huge advantage through small but meaningful technology services. And I love the statement that you shared today about Mahatma Gandhi, and that's the utmost example of how legal services could be serving the people. I'm really thankful for that. I myself also follow 𝗟𝗲𝗴 maximization of pleasure and minimization of pain as the ultimate purpose of the law. So yeah, I mean, legal technology can definitely help us with that too. So yeah, that's about it from my side.
Yeah, I think we can go on and on and on about the bottlenecks and the problems and the
But thank you
issues
so much for putting this together. Yeah.
that are stopping us. I mean, as I always like to say, I think in South Asia, the borders might be different, but the stories remain the same. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
so
Yeah,
it's
that's very
so much,
true.
it's so much relatable to what Maldives might be going through, to what Bangladesh might be going through, what somebody in Jharkhand might be going through, to what our folks in Nepal are going through. It's the
Yeah.
problems are almost the same. The irony is that some of the best brilliant technology minds come out of this area all the time, but the products that they come out with, the brilliant innovations they come out with, has been an asset in the Western world and not in our world in the first place.
Yes, but Alok, I think, and I just want to pitch in here, right? Because that's an important aspect that you've touched upon, and that's also got to do with a lot of scholarship, by the way.
Yeah.
And that's mostly because of the enabling environment. I think when we're looking at justice, also we have to look at it similarly as to why is it that, in terms of thought processes, right? Thought leadership has been present in the field of justice, and you can go back to historical anecdotal evidences in terms of how, as social beings, we have viewed the right from the wrong. And some of it is culturally inculcated as well. And you're right in terms of saying that it is, it could be the same for Maldives, it could be the same for Burma. The challenges that are there in Pakistan are also there in India, are there in Nepal, and they're there in Bhutan. I mean, whichever place that you might be looking at, whether India, abroad, South Asia, there is a certain amount of homogeneity in terms of certain things that we don't see taking shape. And that's got to do with enablement. And enablement is about providing the right sort of atmosphere for it to develop. And unfortunately, when I hear about the challenges that Santosh, you brought about so beautifully in terms of Nepal's context, I mean, I found myself nodding, saying, well, that sounds like a very similar story. It is, it'd be intellectually dishonest of any of us to say that, oh, no, this is not a problem we grapple with, or a frustration that we see on a day-on-day basis. However, having said that, I think it's also important to remember that, as a post-colonial society, there are those challenges that are there. So let's acknowledge that there is a part of it which stops us, and that stopping is a part of our evolution. And even at the same time, so I have a lot of optimism about how things would go, because there is a sense of agency that is present in people. Now, whether that sense of agency is also going to get translated when technology meets the justice access system, or technology meets law, because eventually law is about what? It's about a justice access system. That's it, as simple as that, right? So when it meets that, I think I'm fairly hopeful that once it comes to a phase where we are able to realize that it is only about enabling. It is about enabling, and that enablement has to come in by a concentric effort at all levels, and with economic resources being set aside for it. Unless that happens, I think this will come and go, and it will just keep taking place in an ad hoc fashion, which is not to say that there has to be too much control about it. Even if the control or the policies that come in have to be policies that help people develop rather than stunt growth in the area. Because I think that is the challenge that we all face if we're looking at technology and law. But sorry, please carry on. You were talking about something. I thought I'd interrupt with this.
No, that is
That's
completely fine, Khaled. This is a really interesting conversation going on. I'm really enjoying it. I'm gonna stretch this conversation for probably another 15 minutes, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah. So now let's go back to the final section of our conversation. Now let's talk more about the future, what the future holds. How the legal community is supposed to adapt to it, what kind of policies. I mean, I read somewhere about Santosh commenting on a thread in a lawyer group yesterday about the best quote he received from one of his teacher was, how much minimal things are you keeping in perspective while drafting the laws and policies. Santosh had a really funny way of putting it. I can't do it. Yeah. So let me just give you some data that I pulled yesterday from Hootsuite. This is the data from January 2019. And this is about internet penetration in the South Asia. So basically, South Asia is around 42% in internet penetration. Nepal is at 54%. Although the government claims to have it around 70%, I highly doubt that. And technically, when we're talking about legal technology, we can't really count mobile data either. So that the broadband penetration might be even lower. India is somewhere around 41%, 41 to 45, based on which data you look at. Pakistan is around 36 to 40%, Bhutan at 51, Bangladesh at 55, Sri Lanka at 34, Afghanistan at 26. And the only bright light I see is Maldives at 83%, probably because the entire country is based on tourism as well. I'm not sure. I don't want to make any judgment in that matter. So that's I think the primary problem when we're talking about legal technology and access of law through legal technology. How can we expect legal technology to take larger leaps in situation like this? I'll start with Talis.
So again, if there is no last mile penetration, then as a true democracy, and most of these nations are a democracy, it is legal online dispute resolution will not be the only mechanism of dispute resolution, of justice delivery. It is going to walk in on various methods. And again, I'll take you back to the period when the courts in India were set, 1860, the Act of 1860 that came about. It was unimaginable that there were going to be a court system that was based on the Commonwealth system. And yet today it functions. So there needs to be a certain amount of future visionary thinking in that. So today, of course, this is the level of internet penetration that you've talked about. But let's also talk about last mile accessibility, and let's also talk about the cost of getting on the internet. In terms of the last mile accessibility, it's a wonder that it's managed to get across to 45 to 50% or 40 to 55% in this bracket that you spoke of. Even for Maldives, whatever might be the compulsions, let's not forget it's a group of islands, that it could get there across to 83% in terms of their islands, and I don't even know how many there are, is itself a tribute to the will of ensuring that there has to be connectivity. So which means that it can be done. But the second part of it is also the fact that, about the cost of data, which, by the way, in South Asia is one of the cheapest in the world. I mean, I still recall a trip at which I had to pick up a data plan, and I was aghast. I said, we can take care of an entire month's data plan for an office with 15 people in what it costs for a single person. And that's mostly because of the technology policies that we saw around the region that started with this immense push and immense thrust on technology way back in the 1980s. And that was pushed by a whole bunch of leaders that were futuristic looking. So in that sense, I think today's leadership needs to look and leap beyond just about looking at, what is it going to get them in the short term. It's about the long term. So that process will take its time. And until that process is complete to the satisfaction, you cannot do away with the justice delivery mechanisms that are working right now, which is not to say that any of these South Asian nations have a great record for, if you look at the international list, we're pretty low in terms of dispute resolution and other lists. I mean, it's practically like who's going to come first from the bottom in terms of do you spot your friends? I mean, it's one of those things that run around in this region. So in that honesty, I think this for the time being, I see online dispute resolution running side by side. I also see the fact that there might be a creep of a lot of practices which we've seen take place in more developed countries, unless we are able to put in some sort of a Nordic model or a European Union model where we come across very strongly. Because remember again, tech companies, because they are fast moving, because that domain is understood only by those that are into technology, can also take advantage of a lot of things. I mean, we are seeing the data privacy issue that has been taking place. We do see how the Digital Millennium Organization in the US has been going after these people. So you need organizations like that. You will need that body to guard our rights. Otherwise, before you know it, because in today's world, online rights are as much a part of our offline rights. So before you know it, you will have corporate interests impinge upon that. And let's be honest here in terms of admitting that we are all bound by our constitution to be socialists, at least in the Indian context we are. So therefore, it is important that what is for the public benefit cannot be given away in private interest. So it's that sort of challenge that I was talking about when I said law and meets technology has so many facets that it's difficult to sort of give any advisory as to how it can be done, except that it must be long term until the time online dispute resolution can penetrate 100%. You can't get rid of the system that's there. Until that time, it has to take place slowly. But you need policy frameworks, which would be policies that would be agile enough to hold good for the next 100 years. And that should not be tough. After all, our constitution is 70 years old. It's still as dynamic as ever. One can obviously make documents around dynamism of the technology, keeping in mind the various things. What it requires is the political will. It requires the public will to do that. And it requires a stakeholder will. So I believe that at this current point in time, the stakeholder will is definitely there. Both technology players as well as legal players are looking at it actively. The other two remains a question to be seen.
Yeah, I'll just add a follow-up question as it's more futuristic looking. When it comes to, we talk about right to information being implemented, the entire process being implemented in Delhi itself, and you have been involved with a lot of policy drafting for right to information as well. Can you shed some light on the best practices about right to information in Delhi? And
I think, I wouldn't be the right person to say, because not in terms of policy, but I did work a lot in terms of filing in RTIs. And I think the best part of it was the will that was there in the first lot of chief information commissioners that came up. And I'd like to mention Shri 𝗟𝗵𝗹𝗶𝗆 on that. I mean, he's absolutely inspirational in terms of his life and how he took that with the spirit of transparency. But very importantly, also, they followed a method wherein in terms of access, you could put in an online RTI. There were various things that has come about, but the picture is not a very happy one right now, because you see, RTI also has this overwhelming clause under Section 8 in India, where under a lot of these reasons that are given, an RTI application can be rejected. But having said that, RTI brought about, and that's why there is a lot of movement in terms of curbing the right to information. But information in its true sense is power, and power gives agency, which leads to a true democracy. And that principle was very well enshrined and remains enshrined in the Right to Information Act. And therefore, in terms of delivery mechanisms, because of the people who sat there to draft it, and because of the will that had been brought about, because again, remember that it came through in terms of agitation. There were organizations and thinkers and intellectuals who were involved in getting the Right to Information Act passed. They were able to see that you will have to give it access through technology. So they understood the importance of technology. Because if you're talking about information, if it has to go through the older methods that are there, then it can take forever. But what is the meaning of limitation periods of 30 days that you might have for a government office? Because paperwork can take forever. So all of those means were there, but they were also used as means to be able to expose. And ironically, while it used technology, the RTI was also a means to expose as to how technology was being used by governance and governments to take away. And this is way back 2011, 2012. I remember filing one with the Ministry of Home Affairs where I asked them about phone tapping, and they admitted that, look, we have a right to do that across means, and we are taking information from companies. And of course, I mean, that made a bit of public noise and then later died out. And those are debates that remain as relevant, because who has access to the information that we're going, which we choose not to give. So those are questions that are there. But RTI as in terms of technology was able to take on. And again, I'll come back. At that point in time, experience was that it was a will. It was the will of the first lot of the chief information commissioners we saw. It was the will of the public representatives. It was also the will of the people who had moved around. So I do believe that, the power of the people is very instrumental in this entire process. So when you're looking at technology, it's not just the technology. The technology does exist, or even if it doesn't, tomorrow there's going to be a smart person who come around and say, there's a need, there's a demand, we will provide with the supply. So those mechanisms are present. It's a question of the public will. It's a question of how the governments are going to take it.
Okay. On a similar note, Santosh, I want to come to you with this. How do you see the laws evolve in regards to legal technology in South Asia? I mean, you can put it in the context of Nepal as well, because even yesterday when I was informally talking to Talise, we were talking about the data security side of it. I mean, blockchain has definitely solved a lot of the problem as well, but I think the drafting new policies and drafting new laws now has more to do with adopting with the technology rather than trying to restrict it.
Right.
So how do you see it evolve in South Asia?
Well, but I mean, she put it pretty well with the word with the phrase political will, and I think that's very important. Unless and until there's political will, political desire to represent popular will, I mean, it's basically a struggle, uphill struggle. But like she said, I mean, sooner or later, technology exists. It's there. It's gonna come there anyway. But whether there is a political will to bring that and make it easy, faster, is the bigger question, and that's definitely a political will, especially in our parts of the world. Having said that, I see legal technology as because I follow a few legal technology platforms all around. So I have been following the South Asian legal market as well. It's a huge opportunity, technology, in terms of business. In terms of the industry as a whole, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry right now. It's projected to be a multi-billion-dollar industry, just the South Asia block. And I think incubators are the way to go. I see like India's largest number one law firm, I guess, 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗹𝗶𝗆 they started an incubator called Prarambh, if I'm not mistaken, and there's similar legal incubator in Southeast Asia called 𝗟𝗲𝗴𝗪, similar 𝗟𝗵𝗹𝗹𝗀 in Pakistan. And I think incubation is the way to go, where not just in a private business perspective, but how can we leverage technology to make lives of the people easier in terms of access to justice, in terms of guaranteeing their, at least guaranteeing the fundamental rights. And there's a lot of things around it. It again comes back to the popular will. I'll give you a very subtle, simple example of, even today, if I want to register a company right now, I can do that. I can go online, I can generate an employer tax identification number in next less than 5 minutes. I can submit online incorporation of a document tonight, and by tomorrow, I could have the incorporation ready. I mean, it's a very simple process. If one person in one part of the world has the ability to incorporate and go online and do their business, why cannot a person in another part of the world have similar access to the legal system and leverage the technology and the means to do it? Whereas, I mean, the technology part of this whole process would be same regardless of where we are. So this is, I mean, I usually think about it, and that's my motivation behind legal technology, basically. And I truly believe that
Santosh, looks like you've been muted. Hello, Santosh? Santosh, can you hear us?
and learnings from each other's legal systems are definitely going to help.
I'm gonna come with a similar question to Talisa as well. Let's try to sum it up in very short time, maybe probably 2 minutes. What kind of laws do you expect to regulate legal technology for the future?
So I think a law that would be flexible. I think that's important because of the changing nature of technology. A law that focuses on rights of individuals, especially right to access to justice, and a law that focuses on things like privacy. These are, I mean, that's my very short ask. Just make it flexible so that you don't have to keep changing it and making it a tough job for people like us who have to reinterpret it. But at the same time, ensuring that all the principles that are enshrined in the democracy and our constitution are also borne in mind and kept as the backbone of such a law. That's all that I think at the moment. That's a very short wish list. But in terms of a short wish list, that's the thing. It's almost always very difficult to deliver.
Yeah.
Thank you, 𝗟𝗏. So just the last note for you guys. I mean, I'll start with 𝗟𝗏 again. Just shout out to any organizations out there doing really well right now, or how people can help them right now. Please feel free to go for it.
So I would just say shout out to each one of you individually. I know all of us are going through trying times, and therefore hold on to your health, both physically and mentally. And whatever you can do, this is a time when you should actually go out and commit towards charity personally. Go out and make that one person's life better, as many as you can. I know the temptation of shouting out to a whole bunch of organizations are there, whether in this space, in the legal space or technology. But at the moment, I'd say, if you're a person, look at the change that you can bring about. If you are the change that you believe in, then the world will be a better place. But hang into yourself. It might look like trying times, but think about the times that if you make it through, you'll have interesting stories to talk about.
Santosh?
Awesome. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Yeah. Shout out to everyone, all the first responders out there who've been, you know, taking all the hit for all of us. And shout out to everyone who is staying home and complying and helping world a better place as we all are going through this. And yeah, together we can, and this too shall pass. Yeah.
Thank you so much. By the way, on last note, I would like to let everyone know that from today, basically it's Saturday though, but still it does not feel like Saturday, or what is Sunday, what's Saturday. I mean, I can't even differentiate anymore. But then again, 𝗟𝗏 𝗏 is starting free legal consultations for SMEs from today. So we're gonna flash it out from our social media as well. Let everybody know. I think this is the least we can do at the moment. And we're going to keep coming up with shows like this to basically create content for you guys as well, not just to talk about, have legal discourse, but I think we need content right now. We need so much content because everything has been saturated. And then on the last note, I would like to let everybody know that ignorance of law is no excuse. Justice delayed is justice denied. And access to law is our fundamental right. Thank you to both of our guests for coming up today for such an awesome conversation. I hope everybody stays safe, and we'll see you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to 𝗟𝗏 𝗏. Lovely having you here.
Thank you, 𝗟𝗏. It was really great having you, and then learning so many things. I've got a whole bunch of notes from you, and this is awesome.